Well, right now I am in the Polish city of Przemysl. This is a place that many people may not have heard of, but it's an old city. It's over 1,000 years old, and this place played a vital role in the First World War. So as I mentioned, we're in Poland right now. During the First World War, this would have been in the northeastern corner of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And the battle that took place here at Przemysl has sometimes been called the Stalingrad of World War I, or the Verdun of the Eastern Front. But what happened here during World War I would go on to become the longest siege in that conflict. When it comes to the history of the First World War, I think it would be fair to say that most people's knowledge probably is anchored in what happened on the Western Front, and really not much is known, or not as much is known, about the fighting that took place between Germany and Austria-Hungary and Russia on the Eastern Front. So that's why I'm pretty excited to be here in Przemysl. Now, whenever I talk about Fortress Przemysl, don't think of a fort like in the classical sense, you know, like Fort Sumter or something like that, or some singular structure that is defending a particular area. Przemysl is more of a fortress city. So it has a central location, and then there is a ring of 15 large forts along a circumference of about 30 miles that have a bunch of smaller forts in between it. So this is a highly fortified area whenever World War I kicks off in the late summer of 1914. And we probably need to establish why Przemysl is an important place for both the Central Powers and the Allies. One, as you are moving from west to east, Przemysl occupies the last piece of high ground before you start moving into the flat territory of Russia. Second, it essentially guards the gate into the passes that go into the Carpathian Mountains. So for Russia, if you want to get to places like Vienna or Budapest, well, you got to go through Przemysl. And finally, in addition to those other two factors, like with other major wars, the road networks and the railroad networks go through Przemysl. So this is a hub that the Austro-Hungarians and the Central Powers desperately want to protect, and that the Russians desperately want to take. And one of those forts that was protecting this area is this one right here. So where I am standing right now is Fort Number 1, which is also called Salisoglio, is how I'm going to say that. And you can see an artist's depiction of what this fort would have looked like in 1914. And they also have a very helpful map here that shows us, here's like the central area of Przemysl, and then you have these major forts all the way around this ring. So Fort Number 1 is right here, kind of at the tip of the spear from where the Russians are going to be advancing. Of course, that's present day Ukraine. So whenever the war kicks off, Russia is going to be coming from this direction to try and take this city. And right here is the gate, which is under construction, that leads into Fort Number 1. Here's a little bit better look at the gate that leads into Fort 1 here at Przemysl Fortress. And like I said, it looks like they're doing some some restoration work or something like that, which is kind of unfortunate for us in the moment because we can't really see everything with clarity, but it's good for the sake of preservation. And I just took a quick look over here. So here's the look that we have that leads into the fort itself, and this, I've got a feeling, is going to be cool as heck. And they've also done something really nice. They've put some signs up in English that tell us what each of these little stalls are. So this was a guardhouse and a jail. So if you were causing some problems inside the fort, well, that's where you might find yourself. Okay, moving on into the interior of this fort, and man, this is just old and cool. I may have mentioned it already, and maybe I didn't, but these fortifications were built around the 1870s, 1880s. Actually, we'll come back to that here in a second. And by the time World War I had rolled around, this style of fortification had really become a little bit outdated. But holy smokes, this is really fascinating. Now, fortunately for me, they have some signs in English to tell me what each of these are. This room right here is the casemate for the commandant. And then if we move over here, this is a casemate for the officer. So he would have had bunks stacked up in here. Commandant, of course, would have most likely had his own quarters. And then if you look at all of these others, well, these are casemates where the regular infantry soldiers would have stayed. If anybody decides to come to this place after me, I promise I did not etch my name into the wall. So again, here's another one of these casemates for the soldiers who would have been garrisoned here. And of course, if you have a bunch of people in an area, well, you're going to need some bathroom facilities as well. So here are the toilets, or one set of toilets anyway, that would have been here at the fort. Now, whenever World War I kicked off, I think it's fair to say that the Austro-Hungarian army was less than awesome. So the Russians were advancing on this fortress city. The Austro-Hungarians went out to meet them. They ended up clashing kind of around the area of present-day Lviv in Ukraine. And Austro-Hungarians absolutely got routed, ended up suffering like 33% casualties, and ended up retreating back through Przemysl. And it was the people here in this place that were basically tasked with holding out and holding off the Russian onslaught that was going to be coming their way from the east. So I mentioned that this fort was kind of at the tip of the spear for the Przemysl Fortress. And whenever the Russians got here, they couldn't take it immediately and ended up laying siege to Przemysl Fortress in about late September of 1914. And they proceeded to start pounding this place. So you can see inside the fort here pieces of battle damage from the artillery that the Russians were sending the way of the Austro-Hungarians. And what was really bad for the Austro-Hungarians, a lot of their weaponry and a lot of their artillery dated from like the 1860s and 1870s. They were still using black powder in a lot of cases, and didn't have enough firepower or range to fire back on the Russians. So these guys were going to be in a pretty bad shape. Okay, looks like we have some sort of corridor here that, dear heavens, goes into the darkness. I'll get my light out here. Oh, cool. I'm glad that they have these things. Okay, so this is the ammunition magazine that we're looking at here. Now, one of the things that I did learn is that they only kept a limited amount of ammunition and powder here at the fort, because if you keep too much and it gets hit, well, that can have some explosive results. And boy, my voice is really echoing in here. So anyway, yeah, this is the ammunition storeroom. And if we go back out here, oh, okay. So this is probably, there was probably an elevator type thing right here where they could load up powder and shells and then send it up to the guns. All right, so yeah, interesting. Okay, still continuing to move through this fort. Soldiers got to eat, so these rooms right here would have served as the food magazine, so place for food storage. And of course, all of these would have had like a wooden front on them. They wouldn't be open like this. And then this right here was the kitchen. Okay, so moving out of the food magazine now, and this room that I'm entering into right here, this would have served as the telegraph room. Okay, so this is kind of a communication center for the fort, where they would communicate, with other forts and with the outside world. All right, going to go ahead and go up top and see what things look like up there. This is kind of the living area of the fort. Now we're going to go see like where the gun positions were. I just walked outside of the telegraph room and couldn't help but notice the big chunk of wall that is missing. And I'm guessing that that's probably due to some battle damage that was sustained by Russian artillery. Okay, like I said, we're going to leave this portion of the fort and climb this gargantuan set of stairs and see what we got up here. Okay, so yeah, there's the morning exercise for the Austro-Hungarian soldiers, and holy smokes. Dang. So this is interesting. I have never, well, obviously, I've not been to any World War I front, forts on the Eastern Front, but this is really interesting. Given that we had a like a little elevator for artillery and powder, this most certainly has to be the gun positions here at Fort 1. Okay, I found a sign here that is helping me out a bit. All of these concrete structures that we are looking at are ammunition magazines. Very, very interesting. Man, this is just cool as heck. Now, to the best of my understanding, here we're on the kind of the left flank of the fort. To the best of my understanding, on the left flank here, they would have 9-centimeter artillery guns that were used to like reinforce the other forts around the Przemysl ring. And then I'm guessing that like up here in the middle is where they would have their big guns, which were the 12-centimeter artillery guns. And actually, we're just gonna take a walk in here. Oh, and see what this is. Huh. Interesting. Oh, okay. So let me adjust my lighting just a little bit. This most certainly has to be that elevator that we saw earlier, except for this is the top end of it. So all of the munitions would come up and be delivered here, and then you would have, you know, the soldiers who were manning this fort would invariably take them up and arm the guns that were protecting Austria-Hungary. All right, so there's the concrete structure that I just came out of. And then I'm assuming this would have been like the gun pit. So if we move up here, well then, dang, we are way the heck up here. Wow. So anyway, we're looking in the general direction where the Russians would have attacked from in 1914. All of these trees would have been gone, of course, and that is present-day Ukraine. Oh, look at here. There's actually the border markers between Poland and Ukraine right there. So that just shows how close we are to the border. Very cool. All right, now, as I mentioned, the Russians weren't able to take Przemysl Fortress. So they ended up settling into a siege in late September, early October of 1914. And this was going to last throughout the winter, all the way up into March of 1915. There was an effort by the Austro-Hungarians, right in the middle of winter of all times, to try and cross the Carpathian Mountains and relieve the soldiers who were under siege here at Przemysl. It ended up being a massive failure, a lot of casualties due to like frostbite and freezing to death. It was just a horrific experience. But anyway, the people here, both soldiers, you know, in the forts and also the citizens in the city, really suffered greatly during this siege. All right, right now, we're going to hop back into our vehicle and jump over to one of the adjoining forts here in the Przemysl Fortress ring.